you have to have a reason to say yes, and it has to be internal. Something about the script or the person says, that's the reason I want to jump. And you have to have a reason that means something to you. And if it's in there, then I think you can give yourself to the job, to the show. But if you don't, you'll never do it. Even if you're doing the job, if you don't have that emotional reason, you can never really give of yourself.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
John Cho is an actor. I sat down with him in the Bowery Hotel to talk about the work.
Do you have a general way that you begin your process with a role?
Yeah. For me, the most important thing is, this sounds really dumb probably, but to have block out some time to read the script without interruption and in solitude. And I sort of try and create to just feel like what the movie should be, will look like and will feel like, and sort of watch the movie in my head. And so I have a feeling of what the movie is, and hopefully the script is very good, and so all those impressions are strong. But I go back over and over to that feeling, because to that primary impression, because you can get lost in the weeds a little bit when you're on set, and especially with comedy, you can sort of chase a joke for a long time and forget that, oh, we're just really supposed to, this scene is really about being scared, and now we've made it about the trash can falling on my head, and so you just that's a kind of a mechanical one, and there's also more dramatic examples, but I just go back to that primary memory all the time, and that if you do it right, I mean, what you don't want to do is sort of read it skim it and then approach it piece by piece. I think what you want to do is just get like a really good total impression and then go piece by piece.
And for a role like in this movie, Searching, this is the worst nightmare for some people, losing a child. So when you know it's going to be at that level you have to get to, what are the first mechanics in your craft that you're starting to do to prepare for those scenes?
Well, I think for me, for this particular thing, there's a certain degree of latitude you have in a normal script when you go, you run down the hall and you're looking for your daughter. Well, I go, okay, so I'm wondering where she's at, and then we'll get into this hallway and I'll see what it's at, and then we'll get there and we'll figure out which doors to look into and what I'm looking for. Is she in the bathroom? You fill in the specifics when you get there. So it all becomes real, as real as possible. You're like, okay, is she in the closet? You check her room. Is she at her desk? No. And then, but in this script, there was a lot more sort of very mundane text work, in the sense that I had to know what was happening, because all that stuff, that hallway, was digital. And so I spent a lot of time with Aneesh just going, what exactly is that? And there was a lot more of what is happening questions than in any other script, because most other scripts are pretty self-explanatory, and then the rest of it is revealed when you get into the actual space. And then secondarily, I just went through the script with him, because so many things were going to be set in stone before I got to set. I went through him I went through the script with him and said, is this plausible? So, is this too coincidental? Or so there was a lot of mechanical stuff, and then plausibility. There's a very long plausibility read that I did with him. Mm-hmm. Would he see that? How does he Google that? So all those, because they had to create a graphic and stuff, so we had to really you can't improvise stuff, so we had to make sure that was all set.
And plus, it has to be real for you. Like you it has to be. Otherwise, you can't play it, right? I mean, like
right.
With all this.
So I didn't want there was this language of just being really specific with I'm seeing that, and I didn't want it to be like a general, and I think that was the hardest thing because it was it was like a super extreme version of green screen in the sense that everything on the screen was an imaginary, and all the dramatic events are happening on this blank computer screen that I'm looking at. They had a dummy computer so that I could sort of feel like I was typing, and things would come up up in the left corner. A notification would come in, a text notification. In the right corner I would be typing. So I just didn't want that to look general and washed out, so just everything I had to be very physically specific with my eye line, and there were very tight eye lines, super tight, centimeters, and so I don't know, it's kind of boring stuff, but it was very unusual, and I just sort of feel like it challenged me in terms of focus because again nothing was seen. The closest experience that I had to that was a very frustrating one, and it was and I actually I turned down Aneesh when he first came, turned down the script first because I didn't think it was doable. The movie didn't seem achievable, though I really loved the story. But I knew that it was going to be set on devices, and I wondered if it was cinematic or I was sort of I kind of campaigned with him. Let's just make this movie and not do it on devices. Why don't we just make a regular traditional movie? And I didn't think it could be done. The closest thing I'd done like that was Harold and Kumar 3, which was in 3D. And the reason I say it was similar to that was I don't know if it was specific to our 3D rig at the time, but it was very, very wide, physically wide. And the map box was much wider than normal. And so for over the shoulders on our coverage, we had to look at a piece of tape.
Oh, God.
And I didn't know how hard that would be because every once in a while you have to do that. But the whole movie was on wides we were fine, but on over the shoulders we had to look at a piece of tape, and I found it over time. I found it really maddening, and Cal and I would, right before the take, we would just force each other to look into each other's eyes and recite the lines and try and get we would go over the scene. Go over the scene, and action, and then look at the piece of tape. And that's how we sort of manage that. Acting is just easy. It's just a whole lot easier when you're looking into a person's eyes, and that's one of my shorthands is I try to avoid in my blocking, looking out the window at the skyline and saying my lines if I'm having a conversation with somebody. Because I just tend to be falser when I do that, and truer when I look into a person's eyes. And so anyway, that was very hard, and it was one of the reasons why I said I don't want to do the film. And then Aneesh came back and pitched me what he was going to do, and I thought maybe I just liked him, and I thought I think we'll give it a shot.
I mean, it seems like it was a giant risk. I mean, this was on a fast track to be a novelty thing. and it's
Right.
and it is so much not that, to the point where I wrote to one of your representatives, like he asked me how I liked it. I said I love it. I said, but this thing has to be seen on the big screen because it's given reverence to our screen that we see every day. If you're seeing it on, like a lot of people watch movies on your computer. If you're seeing a movie on a computer,
Right.
the reverence is gone in a way. You know what I mean? I think this is going to be a big deal in the movie theater. Like, I really think so.
I hope you're right. I do think you're right in the sense that, I mean, that was another thing when we were talking about distribution, and we took it to Sundance, and there was bidding going on, and we had talked about it, and we said, listen, this is all I ask from you. This is just me. I'm not, whoever buys it, they have to be committed to a theatrical release, because this is cinema. And what we're doing is talking about, I mean, the problem that the movie is addressing, let me go back to that, is we are living our lives inside devices, and we are having scenes. We're sitting here in a room talking, but so much of that dialogue in our lives today has been transferred to the screen. There's all these scenes in a movie that would happen on a sidewalk or in a room are now happening in devices. And so the movie is saying, well, how can we dramatize what has happened in our lives, which is all this exchange happening electronically? If we're going to dramatize the device, we have to go big. We have to go outside the device and paint it for as big as it feels, and not diminish it. So I think watching this on a screen might work, but it would be a diminished experience. And I think to get at the emotion and to understand really the visual, when you see it on a big screen, you're understanding inherently, oh, we are now living our lives in there. But I think you don't get that message if you're looking at it on a device.
Not quite as much.
Not quite as much.
Yes.
I think the drama would work, but
yes.
For me, when I watched it, I thought, boy, the language of the computer, those things have so much emotional weight now. And I was talking to Aneesh about this, and I thought, we couldn't have made this movie, I don't know, not even 10 years ago. Is that the sounds, the texting, all those things have dramatic information that I didn't know I knew. I didn't know I was this versed in this language. But he manipulated that language, and I was like, that means something to me. Technically also, the one film that I had watched, and on the basis of which I said no to this project, was a movie called Unfriended. And I thought, I don't think I want to do this particular thing, because it wasn't, and I actually thought that movie was very suspenseful and worked and stuff, but for me, I was like, this is static and not cinematic. It's like they kept, you just saw the screen, and it was static. And we talked about that, and when Aneesh and I met the second time, when I had passed, and he pitched me a version. So basically, I mean, the camera does move. It tracks and dollies and zooms into the text and all the things on the screen. So he was assuring me that the camera would move, but not in a traditional way, and that we would be using elements of cinematic language as we know it.
And I would say even expanding on that, and I sat with a bunch of critics, but what I wanted to do, I wanted to pull everybody into a huddle, and I want people smarter than me to start writing about this. Like right then, I was worried they were going to leave and just like consider it the normal way. I think it's a radical film cinematically in a way. I hope people recognize it like that. I really do. Plus, there's things in it like, I don't know if everybody feels this way, but I felt this way. Like the idea of going back into an old PC that you don't use anymore. Right, like your wife's PC.
10 years ago, we didn't have, computers were only the present and future tense. And now we're far enough into our lives, our electronic lives, that we have nostalgia
Yes, that's right.
for and memories
That's right.
that are associated with the computer. And the other thing is, we have a generation that's grown up, kids with an association with the computer since they were born.
Yeah.
And for me, my kids, not only their use of it, but my memories of my child are all on my computer. And so whenever you bring children into it, the fact that we've had a generation of children whose lives have been documented on a computer and also have used it, so we have a lot of emotion wrapped up in these devices that I don't think we're entirely acknowledging, you know what I mean?
Right.
It played into that.
Yeah. Let's go into it a little bit. Like you're saying, this is a very unique actor experience that you had to slide into here.
Yeah.
And this director, Aneesh, is not very experienced at directing actors, right? I mean, I think this is his first feature film. I mean, was that another worry? Like you're almost going into so many uncharted territories here. And in the same question, what do you need from a director in general? And were you worried about not being able to get that on this?
Sure. For this project, I think what I needed most from him was really mundane, which was, what am I doing here? What am I looking at? What does it mean? And he tracked everything. He was actually, because he wrote the script also, he just kept me on point with the story. And his job was more informative than most directors, because really the set, the lighting design, the other characters, they're all in the computer.
Yeah.
And so really it's almost like a director coming onto a bare stage and going, there's a character here and she's delivering the mail, and you get into a fight with her, and there's a step that you're going to trip on right there, but it doesn't exist, so we're going to all, it's almost like just telling you, what you're wearing and what time of day it is. He had to describe everything for me, and so it was an unusual director-actor relationship. And then I felt really out of my element in terms of I just couldn't, I have a sense of when something is working in a more traditional set, and I found that I was a little lost, and I would often come to him and say, did that work? Because there is a different sensibility on an extreme close-up, and so really the only blocking I had was sort of coming in and out of frame, the depth, and so we would discuss the language of it. This is all new, so we were finding our way as we shot.
Having Aneesh kind of fight for you, like wanting to, like not taking no, like coming back at you again.
Yeah.
Does that often happen? And
well, it doesn't, because I don't turn down much. But that was unusual. I think he reached out to me directly, and he came back hard. He had a pitch together. I think you'll have to ask him the story, but I think he as he tells me, he had written the movie for me. I mean, not for me, with me in mind. I was always supposed to be David Kim, and his dad told him, gave him a pep talk, because he was disappointed after I said no, and he said, you must. He might have said something like, listen, you got to go back to him, don't take no for an answer, and you must show him who Aneesh Chaganty is. And so, his dad is a cool dude, and is quite inspiring. And so he came at me and was all charisma. What we did was we talked over the phone the first time, which probably was not the best way to talk about the script. And I think he thought that I would that it would be an easier yes, and sort of wasn't prepared to convince me as much as he was the second time. And then it was, this is what we're going to do, this is the plan, and it was a forced personality.
Maybe more than most actors, you jump around from like big budget things to tiny budget. I mean, a lot of actors do maybe, but is there something in the overall experience for the actor on a big budget movie that you wish were incorporated on a small budget movie and vice versa?
I always thought the fantasy for me was that a big budget, the biggest budget thing I've worked on is Star Trek. And you think that gives you all the time in the world to finish, because that's really the thing that money buys you on is time that you don't.
Right.
And I have worked on some tiny stuff where it's impossible. You're going, you think this is not a makeable day. This is too many pages. It's too much. And so there is some of that, but these days, there are no Kubricks out there shooting forever and ever on one scene, and tinkering and tinkering and tinkering. There's comfort that's nice sometimes.
Yeah.
That on a big set, an area this like as mundane as having a trailer. That is a place where you can change privately if you have an hour to take a half an hour nap. That can make a big difference in your performance in the second half of the day if you can catch a little breather. But on independent films, sometimes you're sitting on folding chairs in another room of the house, and so just stuff like that. I think personal space is like probably the biggest thing that you're guaranteed on a bigger budget set. But in terms of, but more mechanically, it's more similar than different.
Talk to me a little bit about how much another actor in the scene affects you. And I'm thinking of something like Columbus, right? Which I loved. And I couldn't help but thinking like you two were really helping each other. And I think that often when I'm loving a scene, I'm like, well, these two people are in sync.
Thanks. I really love the movie as well, and that's one of the most intimate relationships I've had with an actor, and we, I don't really know that there's just, to me, I love, it's sort of why I do it, I think, psychologically, is intimacy with people. And I think that's the biggest kick I get out of it if I step back and analyze myself. And it's a strange job that you have. And, I always think that that's the high that actors have, which is just going back, you meet a stranger and there's the thrill of then becoming quickly intimate with them, and you spend crazy amounts of time with them, be open with them emotionally, and then it's over. And that's okay. That thing, just going from intimate relationship to intimate relationship, there's a certain kind of perverse thrill in it. And, we worked immediately on just becoming close as people first, and then whatever that is kind of can't help but come into the scene. You eat together, drink together, walk together, and it'll happen. I just happen to like her very much, and I'm sure that informed the performance. And then there was the writing, and then there was which was beautiful, and then there was the filmmaker who we both admired and liked, and so there was a spirit of respect and wanting to give all of ourselves for him and the project, and so that all kind of mixed together to make for very open performances, I think. And I've been thinking lately too. Years ago, I think an agent could have talked me in or out of a project based on its bona fides. That you should work with this director, or this is a smart thing to do. And what I've come to think is that you have to have a reason to say yes, and it has to be internal. So something about it goes, something about the script or the person says, that's the reason I want to jump. And you have to have a reason that means something to you. And if it's in there, then I think you can give yourself to the job, to the show. But if you don't, you'll never do it. And if you don't, even if you're doing the job, and if you haven't made that if you don't have that emotional reason, you can never really give of yourself. And so I started thinking about this because someone asked me once, I was talking about a job, and she said, well, why do you want it? And I hadn't really thought of it because I was in the mode of just book a job. And she said, listen, before you answer, it can be just because you want the money, or just know what it is. You should identify for yourself what it is. I think it'll help you go moving forward. And now I think about it all the time. Why? For me, on searching, what made me say yes was Aneesh is like, I just really like him. I want to see if he can do this. And that became the biggest reason for me. I wanted to do the role, and I thought that emotional journey was something I wanted to play in and thought I could contribute to, but it became very much about him. And then with Columbus, it was a similar situation when I met Kogonada. I really liked the script, but when I met Kogonada, who wrote and directed Columbus, I said, that's an artist, and you don't meet that many artists. There are many people who write films and direct, and but there aren't that many artists, which is a distinction I don't mean to. I don't mean to be insult anyone I've worked with or whatever. This is like, he could have been a painter or a poet. And he's really concerned with expression and what it means to be alive as a human being on planet Earth. And I just wanted to be an instrument of his.
What's your overall assessment of this business at this point in your career? For you, for what you need as an actor?
I'm like everyone else in the sense that I wish I was doing more. I wish I was doing better. I was, and jealous of people, and then I take a step back and I think. I mean, the other day I was I was taking out the garbage, and I stepped out of my house, and I looked in it, and for some reason it struck me, this is my house. I have a house. That's my car in the driveway. All this, and my kids go to school, and they're fed and clothed, and there's food on the table, and I thought, all that's come from pretending. you know, none of that. I didn't get a down payment from my parents. I don't have a trust fund. I don't have any college loans outstanding. Like, all of this has come from acting, which, as a person who was not born in this country and grew up very poor, it's remarkable. If I take a step back and look, it's such a privilege. And, you know, we live in a time when technology the technology of photography has allowed, you know, actors to make a living, versus make a real living, versus you know, getting a trunk of hats and shoes together and getting in a wagon and going from town to town. And so, in the big picture, I'm quite thankful, and I say that honestly. But yes, I'm like anyone else. I wish I could get. You know, I wish the jump from an idea to a product in this business is so hard. There's so many. It requires so many people, so much money, and I think that's the frustration of it. Sometimes it's just I wish, but you can't, and that's also what makes it satisfying. I think is, you know, I've thought about like what is it that I like about what I do, and I think the thing that I like the most is working in concert with other people. I am not a solitary artist, which is to say I don't think I, you know, say if I were a painter, I don't think I'd like to sit in a studio by myself all day. Like, there is something about acting with someone and working with a director and, you know, with the crew, to work in concert with other human beings. And it's more like a team sport model for me, is like achieving something together. That part I really like. So that is the difficulty and the payoff of what we do.
Is there something that you want to do that you're not being given the chance, or people don't know you can do?
I don't know what people think I can do, and I don't know whether that's germane, but I will say what I want to do. I was just talking about, I saw Kogonada last night, and you know, the things that we talk about are things, I want to do things that from movies that I like. And in general, I think about like little things more than big things. Like, I mean, there are actor-y answers to that, which is, I'd like to do Shakespeare, you know, because the words are so fun, and it's hard, and I'd like to try that, and there are things like that. But you know, then there are small things like, I made a little promise to myself that next time I shot a gun on camera, that I would do it from the hip, because I see that in the movies that I like, and it's so cool. Or I want to wear a hat in a movie, because there's so much cinematic history and language with hats. I saw this movie the other night that he and I were talking about. I'm like, I want to pull a bandana off my face. You know, so I mean, and then listen, I'd like to punch somebody on a moving train. But these are all, I guess it all goes down to the movies that I like.
Bucket list, yeah.
That's how I think about things. If you gave me a script and it involved me pulling a bandana off my face, I think I might say yes. Like, just...
You hear that, everybody? That's pretty, I mean, you could put that in pretty much any movie, so...
Well... I don't know. That's hard. No, I think that's hard. Bandanas are not.
Yeah, it'd be a little odd if it just suddenly happened, but you can work it in.
Yeah.
John Cho, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So much for this.
It was fun.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project.